awesome. It saves me having to do it. Crack on, go for it. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, those were interesting. I mean, I remember there was one incident. Well, it wasn't an incident. It was just a thing that was said, where I was talking to these two teenage girls who I think they were at university or college or so. No, I think they were at college, and one of them was studying economics in college, I think, and she didn't completely agree with my summation of how the monetary system works. And this was back in, I think 2011, 2012. And I summed it up by saying, okay, well, one of the things you can ask, you can ask your economics teacher or lecturer or professor or whatever, ask them this question. How can a system of infinite growth and infinite consumption on a finite planet be sustainable? Because really, there's only one other thing that exists that behaves that way. We call it cancer. And Christopher was basically hanging around as well. He was engaged in the conversation as well. And when I said that, he was just like, "Oh yeah," It's like, I mean, it's almost like. It was almost like that reaction you get, when, during a roast where someone's like, "Ooh!" Yeah, it was kind of like that, but in the sense of, "Oh, he just dropped a logic bomb," But yeah, I mean, that's why, that's why I've used that logic bomb before, because it does illustrate things like that. But moving on, other information stalls I've done. Another one I did with Christopher was the Out of the Ordinary Festival, which is now apparently called the Over the Moon Festival in Hailsham. And basically, I printed off. I didn't print off leaflets. Chris provided the leaflet. He had thousands and thousands of leaflets, so we had that angle covered. And we actually gave away probably about about half of all the flyers we had went. So I think at least, in the very least, we gave out about 1,500 flyers at least. And I burnt off, I think, 50 copies of Moving Forward, and well, actually, no. Really, was it 50? Yeah, 50 copies of Zeitgeist Moving Forward, and I think 50 of Zeitgeist Moving Forward and 20 of Zeitgeist Addendum. They all went. All 50 copies of Zeitgeist Moving Forward, all 20 copies of Zeitgeist Addendum, all went, and this was just in a weekend. It was partly because it's a hippie festival, and partly because most of the people that go there are pretty damn awesome people. But yeah, that was interesting. The idea that you could just sit and chill and enjoy a festival environment. Because I mean, this is one thing that I'm going to touch on as well later on about festivals. Because I've gone to other festivals, not in a information stall capacity, but I have gone to festivals by giving out free hugs and talking to people and giving out leaflets and stuff. But yeah, it's the idea that you can just talk to people for a weekend and talk to people who are more or less on the same level as you. The people at the Out of the Ordinary Festival were so open and receptive to the idea of sustainable living, because, for one thing, if they didn't like sustainable living, why the hell would they be at a hippie festival? But yeah, it was a really, really awesome thing, because I think there was probably only. I spoke to about a couple of hundred people Yeah, I'd say I probably spoke to a couple of hundred people. Probably about just over 200 people, probably. But yeah, I think I only remember maybe a handful of them actually disagreeing with something substantial. Obviously there's disagreements about minor things if they aren't completely explained. Because the thing is, I dare say there are a lot of topics that people would agree on if we understood each other's terms and what we actually mean. If we did that, then I dare say we would actually agree a hell of a lot more. But yeah, that was a really cool experience, and we actually had our tent and our stall pitched up right next to Greenpeace, and there was an anti-fracking thing, and I mean, like, this was when fracking was starting to sort of boil up as a proper issue in the UK. But also, what other information stalls have I done? Well, I obviously did London Z-Day 2014. But oh yeah, I did the Cranbrook Music Festival, because I live in Cranbrook, and I thought to myself, because I've been to the festival before, because I've lived here for a few years. But yeah, I thought, why not do our information stall there? And this is where I started. Here is where I started using the bridge table myself. This is where I started holding information stalls all by myself. But yeah, that was interesting. Let's see, what sort of things did I encounter? Well, quite a lot. There were quite a lot of people who were receptive. The amount of positive people to negative people was probably slightly off balance, but not far off. Not far off from being completely 50-50 bad. I'd say there's probably 55% more receptive people than there are ignorant people. But what can I say? It's Cranbrook. So, but I mean, I even had one guy. He actually said to me, "Why can't you just conform?" Just think about that for a minute. Why can't you just conform? Does anyone realise what that means? Does anyone have any idea what sort of concept that bubbles up? Essentially, he's saying, why can't you just accept things and just go along with whatever is dictated to you? How much loyalty and blind subservience and obedience would it have to take to advocate that sort of thing? Really, it's... I mean, because the thing is, this is one thing that I can extend out into with some of the talks that I've had with the Maidstone information stalls that I've started recently, because I've done 2 stalls now, because I've started to do them every fortnight. Every 2 weeks, I go down to Maidstone Town Centre and I do the information stall. But but yeah, I mean, I suppose, moving on to different stalls that I've done. The information stall at London Z-Day for Z-Day 2014. That was really interesting, because it was something where I knew I didn't have to worry about organising it or anything like that. I didn't have to lug any equipment besides my few leaflets of my own, some DVDs maybe, and my free hug sign. That was really what I all I had to carry, really. But yeah, it was so interesting talking to people, especially having opened up the interaction with a free hug first, because the interesting thing about free hugs is that you have no idea. Well, you can sometimes tell when someone is actually going to give you a hug, but that isn't necessarily because of what the person looks like. It's not even. Sometimes you can't even tell based on their behaviour, because there can be someone who just doesn't look like, who basically looks like you should just leave them alone. They're in some sort of headspace where light conversation and hey, how's it going? That would not be welcome. They look like that, but as soon as they see you, they go, "Come here, mate. Give us a hug." So interesting. And I actually got a hug from a really tall guy in a business suit. And, like, it was an actual business. He must have worked on the stock exchange or something, because I think I saw some like ID tag on him or something for London Stock Exchange. But yeah, it was a big guy, and he came in. "Come on there, mate. Give us a hug." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, cool. Hey." Hugging his chest while he sort of leans over me, just towers over me. But yeah, that was good, because it brings it, because the other guys. I mean, there were other people who were like giving out actually standing slightly into the crowd and offering people leaflets as they walk past. Which I personally, I don't know if it's always appropriate to do that, because the thing is, people, we're used to people doing that with just, advertising literature, and just promotional things for nightclub. I mean, like, if you go through most high streets, there will probably be that one person who's employed by a nightclub or by some company to give out leaflets to people in order to sell something. We're used to that. So I dare say a lot of people saw those two guys who were giving out leaflets. I think there was about 3 people that were giving out leaflets, like, directly offering them to people. I dare say a lot of people assumed that, oh no, they're trying to sell something, go away. So I mean, that's why I don't personally take that approach. I take the approach of people have to approach me. I will remain open and try to maintain that sort of, I'm open to talk to you. I'm open to give you a hug, whatever, like whenever you want. I try to maintain that all the time. But the people have to approach me. I don't approach anyone. I don't try to. It's a complicated thing, because sometimes it's unclear whether people should be approached in the street about this sort of thing, or whether you should just be inviting. I mean, that's the approach that I take now. I make myself interesting and inviting, so people who are interested do come over and have a chat. And the people who don't want to approach, they don't have to. I mean, I notice a lot of people sort of slow down when they're walking past me, because they want to hear what I have to say. Or some people actually stop and stand around for a little while I'm saying stuff, and if I notice like a few people, I'll put some pauses in, or maybe I'll wrap up what I'm saying, put the megaphone down, and just like sit there for a little bit, like looking like I'm thinking, when in fact I am doing that. But I'm also just I've basically physically set up the situation of, yep, I'm done with the megaphone, guys. If you want to talk, then here's your chance, sort of thing. You know, I'm open, and I'm looking around. I'm engaging people in eye contact. If anyone looks at me, I say hi. Hi, how you doing? But yeah, that's the approach that I take. I mean, I dare say, this approach doesn't reach as many people. I do grant that. So, handing out leaflets can be useful in the sense that you're getting out a lot of information to a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, it's just a difference of approaches. And the guys who are giving out leaflets and the guys like hanging around at the stall, and if anyone comes over, so yeah, what's all this about, man? This looks interesting. What's all this? And we can say, it's a sustainability advocacy group called the Zeitgeist Movement. We advocate the move out of the need for the monetary system by means of embracing our technological and resource means to provide an access abundance of life needs for everyone on the planet, and using the scientific method to arrive at decisions and apply that to social and environmental concern. But yeah, I mean, those guys are covering the intellectual angle. Myself, I'm trying to do a bit of both. I'm covering the sort of emotional aesthetic angle of holding a sign that says free hugs, because for reasons that I've described in my documentary, if you haven't seen my documentary, it's called Life on the Soapbox. You can find it on my YouTube channel. But I've explained in that how a hug disarms people, and it brings down barriers, and it enables people to talk with a smile because they've just had a hug, and well, if they have enough time to hang around and talk, that is. But yeah, it's just a really nice thing. I cover that angle, and also like after the hug, if they hang around and want to talk and say, so what's all this about? Why are you doing this? That's when I start. That's when I can start bringing in also, but painting it with a good, really compassionate veneer, because obviously that will be natural to feel anyway. If you've just given, it's hard to give someone a hug and then talk like you don't feel some sort of compassion towards them, But yeah, I mean, that's when I'd start bringing in the reason and the intellectual side to why this is. So I was trying to cover both angles, but mainly the free hugs sort of thing. I mean, I had leaflets on me, but and I was referring people to the table and the other leaflets if they wanted to find out more. But yeah, that was a really, really, really wonderful experience. But yeah, the recent information stalls that I've been doing in Maidstone. Now, these have been interesting because I've basically set up my bridge table in Jubilee Square. If for those of you on Facebook who have seen the picture, I might in the YouTube video flash up a picture of where I'm talking about. But I'd basically be set up. I'd be right where the public is moving around, but I'm not causing an obstruction whatsoever. I'm actually right. I've basically got my back to a big sort of. I think it's known as the Queen's Monument, but I've got my back to that, and I'm basically just setting up my stall there, and I basically project my megaphone speaking to like the wider area in front of me. So yeah, there's that, and and I basically just sit there on a camping chair, just chilling out, my feet spread, my legs stretched out in front of me, one foot crossed over the other, and I've just got the megaphone. I've tucked my left hand into my right armpit, and I've got the megaphone in my right hand, and I'm basically just going through things on the megaphone. I'm asking questions, I'm making comments, I'm explaining things, I'm asking more questions, making more remarks, asking more questions, and I stop every now and then, and whenever I stop, I just put the megaphone down on the ground, right next to me, and then, either that or, I stop and just start talking to someone because someone approaches me or whatever. But yeah, that's essentially what I do, and I give out DVDs and leaflets and stuff, and it's been awesome. It really has been awesome. I've had loads of people come up to me, but yeah, there are, because it's Maidstone, there are going to be some ignorant people. Unfortunately, there's going to be some ignorant people, and and I have engaged with them. There are people who, will want to shout things as they walk past, like tell me to shut up, call me a knob, all that sort of stuff. But that comes with the territory. I've been doing megaphone activism in Maidstone for about a year or two, so I'm used to it. But it's very interesting how people would actually listen, even if they're just walking past, even if they're not even showing any signs that they are listening. It's at least going in because I'm using a megaphone. But then again, it depends on the individual's ability to block out anything that may appear like it's challenging any status quo view. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of people. I've given out loads of leaflets. Every single time I go out, I exhaust my supply of DVDs. I'm probably going to have to buy some more DVDs soon. I'm definitely going to have to print up some more flyers, because the 50 flyers that I printed, a few weeks ago are dwindling down now. I think I've probably only got about maybe 15 flyers left, maybe 10, 15 flyers. But yeah, it's such a good way to engage with the public, because you're putting yourself out there, and you're presenting something to engage in a public forum about. It's something for people to come together and talk to about. The only thing is, the last one that I did yesterday, I probably had just as many. I didn't have just as many cynical people as positive. But I probably had two-thirds were positive people, 1/3 negative, and one guy in particular who I was speaking to right at the end, he was a staunch capitalist, and English, it didn't sound like English was his first language, but he was trying to justify the monetary system. He even acknowledged that it isn't sustainable, but yet he's going to teach his son to be as ruthless as possible. Those were his actual words. He actually used the word ruthless. Yeah. And the thing is, he kept saying that a resource-based economy would never happen. It'll never happen. And I obviously I did try. You know, that's the best way to ensure it'll never happen. He completely dodged that. But yeah, it just seemed that he. I mean, we didn't have that much time to get a good discussion going because in the end, I actually cut the conversation. I actually put the conversation to a halt because he was essentially saying that he didn't care about the kind of death, destruction, suffering, poverty, crime, corruption that is caused by the system that he promotes. So, I mean, if that is really his stance, then me and him have and I actually said to him, if you really do support such an anti-human, immoral, and unsustainable paradigm, then and you admit that it's not sustainable, you admit that it's got problems, but you say that nothing else will happen because he kept contradicting himself. At one point he kept saying that there's no hope and that it will never change. A resource-based economy would never happen, and then he kept saying halfway through the conversation that there are things we can do. We can change some things, and then later on he went back to saying it will never happen. And he kept giving these justifications. He actually said, "You don't have any power. You have no power." Not that having power is a guarantee of anything, but he kept giving these justifications that you have no power. The governments won't let it happen. The governments won't fund it. They will stand in the way, and I'm thinking, man, you are a parent. Right? And I actually kept asking him again and again, and he kept dodging the question. I kept asking him again and again, how do you feel about the kind of world that you forced your child to inherit? And eventually he said, well, I don't care. I'm going to teach him to be as ruthless as I can, as I can. But the thing is, one of the things he also said is that granted it was an excuse he was giving for why a resource-based economy won't happen. He said that there are always people that are smarter than you and that will destroy anything that you want to do. And yet at the same time, I was trying to ask him, how do you guarantee that your child will not become a victim of this? How do you know that your child will be more ruthless than anyone? How can you guarantee that the world that you forced your child to inherit is a good one anyway? So, it was just a frustrating conversation because, he said 3D printing is nonsense. Geothermal energy is something from Star Trek. I think it was supported fracking at one point. But yeah, it was just a frustrating conversation. I just said, well, look, if this is your position, really, then I'm sorry, we have nothing more to talk about. And he actually agreed, got back on his bike and went off. Oh man, it was one of those things where you're talking to someone who sees nothing, right? He actually, several times he said, there's nothing wrong with this system. There's nothing wrong with it. And, and a couple of points, I just had this look on my face like, really? Really? Wait, have you got a gun? Can I borrow it? But yeah, it's just one of those things. You know, when you engage